Welcome, everyone. My name is Stephanie Ivick. I'm the Content Marketing Manager here at eLearning Brothers. We have a great presentation for you today, but first I'll go over a few housekeeping items. This session is being recorded and we'll email a copy of the recording to everyone who registered. If you have questions during the webinar, feel free to use the questions panel as we go. We'll get to as many as we can, and if we run out of time, we'll do our best to follow up with you offline afterwards. Joining me today, we have Bill Milstead, Senior Developer, and Alan Marquez, Developer at eLearning Brothers. They're going to show you an interactive haunted office template that they've built. I'm very excited about it. So without further ado, Bill, I'll let you get started.
Good. All right. Yeah. So welcome everybody to this edition of LECTORA Live. Like Stephanie said, Alan and I are here today to bring you a new interaction template that we just put up on the library, and actually which will be available for download at the end of this webinar when everything gets emailed out to you. That is a little bit of a different way to build out an interaction, or really a game, in LECTORA. So we're going to take a look at that today, right? Like she said, it's a spooky interaction for a spooky season. We built a haunted escape room, a haunted office escape room, using nothing but built-in LECTORA features and ELB library assets. So that's what we're going to do today. Alan and I are going to walk you through that, and we're going to do it in a pretty conversational way. So even though I've got this PowerPoint presentation up, I've got an agenda technically on there, and we're gonna, we've got some formalized slides going. We got a small group here, and the story of the way that we ended up getting where we got with this file is it's very collaborative. So we're going to try to keep it that way in this presentation today, right? So Alan and I are going to bounce back and forth an awful lot. Going to keep things pretty light and again very conversational. So that means that if you have questions, do feel free to just kind of chime in, right? We're not pressing up against a huge group today, so that should make it pretty easy to stop along the way if we need to. The basic agenda for today is as follows. We're going to look at the game first and foremost that we got here for you. We're going to take a quick little run through of it so that you can see exactly what we're talking about here, and then we're gonna look at how we built it. We're going to kind of briefly discuss the process that we used to build it. It's a very iterative process. We're kind of going to look at that and think about some neat things that came out of it, and then we're actually going to look into the file as well, or really a couple files. And then we're going to take a look at the very end here about how to make this thing even more funnerer, as I like to call it, by adding some reporting and XAPI into it to create a leaderboard. So by the end of this, we should have something pretty kind of neat to discuss, and again, you should have something pretty neat to download. Before we get there, though, I believe Stephanie's got some survey questions, poll questions, right? Just want to kind of get a feel for the folks that are here. What your experience with LECTORA is, right? So that should be up on screen now.
Yep, you can click right on the screen.
And we'll just give that a couple minutes for everybody to respond. Oh, looks like got a good bunch of responses coming in already.
Yeah, early results coming in. It looks like we've got a good mix of people new to LECTORA with a little bit of LECTORA experience. And then we have some of our long-time LECTORA users who are quite at an expert level.
Well, I think that's actually pretty great. I think that what we're going to cover today should be able to hit all of those groups. I'm especially curious to see how the new folks to LECTORA take this, and the LECTORA experts, because this is a slightly different way than we've done in the past, at least, to build out templates in LECTORA. So that's at least where we're at. All right, we've got one more question for you, and it's related, right? So what about your experience with games in LECTORA? Are you brand new to creating games? Have you used a few game templates? Are you a whiz when it comes to creating games in LECTORA? Where are you at?
So far, it is very heavily leaning towards brand new to creating games. So I think this will be a great presentation for our attendees.
Look at that. Well, that's great. This is wonderful. I would say that especially if you're brand new to creating games, just like Stephanie said, this should be really useful to you, because it is kind of a slightly different way to look at creating a game in really any authoring tool, but especially in LECTORA. So that's really good information to know. We may kind of adapt a little bit of what we talk about along the way, especially that second question there, depending. All right, so let's get into it. Now that we know where everybody stands, we got a little bit to get through here and not a ton of time. So first things first, we're going to talk about a game today. So let's look at this game today, shall we? I've preloaded a version of the game up here for you. Now, if you're at DevLearn over the course of the week, we've actually got this demoing on a kiosk there that you can go in and you can play live, and you'll get some live results back while you're playing. There'll be one little difference. We've got a little area in there that'll launch this for you. You can put your name in it and pop it, but that leads to full code. So we've got it reduced down to just the actual gameplay portion of it today. You see exactly the same thing, but we're not going to track our progress in this session today. When you hit the game, you get, hey, we're going to frame it, right? Surprise, your new home office is haunted. Fortunately, it's also secured with a brand new puzzle lock. Unfortunately, you're locked inside without the code. To make it worse, you've only got 3 minutes to make it out, so you need to explore the room, learn parts of this key code, and then as you discover the different pieces of the key code, you can press the door, enter it in there, and get on out. The goal, obviously, is to get out of the game as quickly as possible. You also have a couple surprises along the way that we've got, and some ways that you can lose points. So we're measuring a couple different things as we go through the game. But the main point, answer your questions, earn your code, get out quick. When I press begin here, I'm going to go straight into my haunted office. So we've got a little flicker there, kind of tell you something's going on. But basically, we've just got an office environment, right, that you can kind of mouse around and explore. Notice we've got some areas that look clickable. So if I click those, I get some pop-ups, right? Some questions here. True, false, Halloween is celebrated annually on November 1st. Now I happen to know that that's not true, so I'm going to hit false. I get some feedback, and I can check the display in the upper left corner to monitor my progress. So it looks like I've gotten a little code up here. All right, we'll have to see where that goes as we go. Okay, apparently I need to put it in here. Don't have it all. So I'm just going to keep clicking around. I'm going to click one of the objects. I get a clue about what Halloween is about, right? The history of Halloween. As I keep clicking on other objects in there, I'm going to get some additional questions, right? Let me say Sam Hain here. As I answer those questions correctly, I'm going to get some additional pieces of my code. There's some more clues throughout. And I can continue answering these questions until I get the full code. Or, since I happen to know what's going on, I can go ahead and just enter that code. How do I do that? All right, we've got an open door now, and I'm going to step into the light. And when I do, I'm going to get this "You escaped" page along with the cumulative time that I took. And I decided I want to look at this scoreboard and see how everybody else is going. So if I click that, it should take me to a follow-up page that has not only my overall time listed, my total score that I received, how many times a clue was reviewed, how many times I got questions incorrect, but it's also going to compare me to everybody else who's played this game. Right now, Matthew Petronas is winning. He's escaped in 7 minutes and 22 seconds. Obviously, I escaped in 2 minutes and 47 seconds, so I should be up there, except that we're not recording the data in this case to reflect it live. But if we were, it would be in there. Same thing, right? We're recording the average score, fastest time, slowest time, how many clues are reviewed, how many incorrect questions there are, and then we're displaying an overall fastest time leaderboard 1 through 5 at the very bottom there. Now, all of that data that's coming in through here is taken from these LECTORA variables on the left-hand side and spit out with one built-in statement coming out of LECTORA. So as far as LECTORA games are concerned, this one's pretty unique, right? We've never built one like this before. As we go through, right, we're going to show you exactly how we did this, how we got to this point, and how we created that data. So let's go ahead and get started. So the process, and Alan's going to start kind of chiming in here along the way, because at this point I get to stop kind of running through and setting the stage, and we can just start chatting about what went on. first thing we want to talk about is how we actually got to that end result of the game, because it all came from just kind of a kernel of an idea, and we went through a bit of a slightly different process than many instructional designers are used to get there. Okay, I've got it written out on the stage here. Far more iterative than we typically do with a lot of instructional design processes. So we weren't really following ADDIE. We were kind of loosey-goosey with this, but because we were, and we framed it out to keep it going too far loose, but because we were able to kind of work, Alan and I, together on this project throughout this process and have multiple touch points and iterate throughout our build, we ended up in a far different place than we began. Okay, so here's how it came out. Right, our friend Chris Willis, she had an idea for a new game in LECTORA. She said, "Hey, what about an escape room?" I'm thinking that could be pretty cool here. Kind of that touched all this off. So from that little bit of that kernel of an idea, Alan and I got into a want to say room, but a Zoom room, and we started talking about this, right? So all right, escape room. What's a really good way to frame an escape room in LECTORA? Right? You think about your users, you think about where it's going to be being used, trying to make this something that's a little bit more relevant to the folks that we work with, rather than where we could go. We could make this a space game where all kinds of ideas around it. But right about now, everybody's pretty familiar with the idea of being trapped in their office, so that seemed particularly appropriate for this game. So we landed there, right? Like, let's do this as a haunted office. Well, actually, just rather stuck in an office, right? Locked in an office. Alan's a game player, though. I'm not. And one of the points that he brought up, because originally this was going to be, you're in an office, you got to click around some things, answer some questions, you get out, was that, well, in a game, specifically these escape room games, you got to have suspense, right? The number one, you got to have a motivator. You got to have a reason to get out. There's something that's chasing you, and it's something that's causing a problem for you to get out. Can't just be boredom, right? It can't just be I've been in my office for too long. So, well, it's October, right? So then the next thing comes up, well, why don't we do it as a haunted game, right? This kind of back and forth conversational process. And we ended up with, all right, so that's all right. We're going to make a haunted game. We're going to make it stuck in an office, escape room. Got our three main ideas. Now, let's go out and just roughly storyboard this out. Not so much from a content perspective, but let's just figure out on paper and pencil how this kind of thing might flow, how it might kind of work, and also get an idea of the basic idea, the logic of it, without actually developing anything out. Let's write it out on paper. And from there, we can meet, adapt, figure out what needs to be tweaked, and move forward. That's what we did. We moved from there to a wireframe, or a couple of those wireframes, and then we met again, realized, hey, there's some pretty big gaps in the build process here, revised that, and then moved straight forward to build, test, and then an iterative process between those. We're going to walk you through, again, just kind of roughly, pretty informally here, that process, and show you where we started with the storyboard, show you a couple of these wireframes, then show you how the build developed, and explain why we made some of these changes, as well as highlight some of the features in the final build as we go. So from that, I think Alan's really going to take over, I think, from here, at least for a big portion of it, and start showing you some stuff. So Alan, I'm going to toss this over to you, if that's all right.
Yeah, thank you.
All right. Yeah, no problem. So you should present it now, so you should be able to share.
Okay, cool. As Bill just mentioned, this started with this idea that Chris brought to us, and we were like, okay, we want to have a haunted scenario. In this case, an office. Oh, sorry. Can you see my panels, or can you? I wanted to hide this.
We can see your screen and the thumbnails, but that's it.
Okay.
Looks good.
Oh, okay. So we needed to find the structure for the escape room. What is great about the escape room is about team building, right? It's not only team building and building the whole interaction, but the whole purpose or reason behind it. It's a escape room. You help us we team build it, and we want to have a fun experience, but also not your regular escape room, right? Escape room, there's themes when you go visit an escape room or you are inside a escape room, there are themes, right? So okay, we're in an office situation right now, home office situation. Let's put a twist or a spin on it and have it and make it haunted, right? And so we needed to have first our pre-game room, which is basically our instruction room when rules gets explained. And okay, I just mentioned the theme, the haunted home office environment, and how we switch the office into a dark environment, into a scary or spooky scenario. Okay, we added a switch, a light switch to turn on and off, and this will trigger a different scenario that you will see in a minute. You get a quick peek when Bill was showing you the game, but I will show you further this dark version or haunted version. We need to have clues, in clues as a form of questions, and we also have items that act as a question, like quiz question or test question. And I will show you. These are clickable objects that trigger readers, trivia, and questions. This is basically how you will see a pop-up question from regular e-learning experience, right? This stuff we know, but we try to make it look different. And of course, this is time. This is time we need you. If you run out of time, you will lose because the clock is ticking and you must want to get out alive. And this is an overview. This is the overview of the game room. As Bill was mentioning before, we didn't go with the regular structure of a storyboard. We wanted to have all the items or all the items put into place, and this will be important later because why are we having all of these icons in here? Okay, these icons will serve either as a clues or questions, and we wanted to make it simpler because we wanted to make this a template, right? So we started creating into the process. Okay, we need like three rooms, which means three scenarios, basic scenarios: the instructions, the main room, and the exit room. You will see in the file that there are more than 3 pages for this, but I will explain this also why we needed to have more than 3 pages. And you can see you have your timer, uh, your password indicators in here, and the other clues. But this is basically the structure of our game. And why we did it this way, right? Why we put these or these elements in this position? It actually doesn't matter where of our clickable objects are because these clickable objects are just hotspots. And I will show you in a minute. I will stop rambling about show you in a minute, and I will show you how we started this template, right? And we wanted to, yeah.
No, go ahead.
Oh, sorry. So this is we started like this, like a regular interaction template, like let's say a click to reveal. When we have all of our elements into one single page, right? We have click to reveal the first riddle or clue, and we have another clickable elements here. We have our escape door in here, and this works, right? If we wanted to put what we have it on content board, storyboard into this work, but it's a little bit more complicated as you start adding more items and your title explorer become, huge to having a lot of riddles. Also, we wanted to have this, make this scalable because we wanted to have XAPI statement and test quiz statement in here, and having all of their questions here, it just wasn't working. I mean, it works, but it doesn't look good. It's hard to edit, right? So we ended up splitting this into several pages. Yeah. And putting all of our questions into a test, into a main test. This is one of the things that LECTORA is more, known of because of their quizzing properties and uh, testing objects. And we put this inside a test, and it's even easier to have to track this down, to track the score of this, having this structure.
So when we started off on this, right, just to kind of bring it to here, because we'll start pulling apart this board in a second. We kind of took this PDF that Alan was showing you, right, and mapped out, here are our individual elements that we have for the course. Here's what we need to include. Here are the things we need to account for in our development, right? We had to account for a light mode and a dark mode thing, which you saw flicker when I was showing it to you earlier, just like Alan said. We'll show it to you on a preview here in a second so you can see how it actually works with a little more time. We know we got to deal with some sort of tracking. We've got to deal with some sort of, pop-up situation kind of a thing here. And we've also got to get this in a way that's actually templatable and usable. So we used our PowerPoint, our PDF there to just frame our conversation about what we had to build, and then make some decisions about the basic logic of how it might be built, right? Once we could kind of see what all the elements were, roughly how they might fit together, we knew, okay, here's how we might approach this from a traditional click to reveal interaction sense. And we kind of knew before we even got into building it out that it was maybe not going to be super easy, maybe kind of a little, like Alan was saying, long on the Project Explorer, maybe a little challenging from a template perspective. But we went ahead and built it out just to see how it will work and to see how it would go. And that's what he's showing you here right now, our first iteration of that. We met real quickly afterward, right, and realized, okay, yeah, this isn't going to work to give to people to go in and reuse and change. A lot of our objects were broken apart and individual on the page, right? Objects were objects and not hotspots, like Alan kind of previewed. They're going to be built in this when we walk through it. We didn't really have great control over how to add additional questions or change questions easily without having to go in and pick through everything. So from just our first build, we realized, like, this is probably not going to be a particularly, good template. It's not going to be a good build. It's not going to be a great project. So we got to let's change some things. You meet and you collaborate and you figure that out. And from that, right, the idea of, okay, well, what is it that our users are really looking for if they're going to use this template? How can we make this as easy as possible for them to get to that, right? Comes out and it's, well, it's a quiz. First and foremost, any game that we're building in e-learning it's a tester, it's a quiz. So let's just start there. LECTORA is super powerful with quizzing and testing. Let's use everything that we can out of the box that LECTORA has for testing to our advantage and figure out if we can do that, doing that, if we can figure out a way to make this significantly easier. And so we ended up from that on the structure that Alan's showing you right now, where rather than a single page, like he was saying, with all of our objects on it, all of our questions in that page, all of our clues in that page, we broke everything out to be individual pages, right? And instead the user lands on a single main room, and we use pop-ups of those individual pages to bring content into that main room, allow the user to close out a clue, answer a question, submit something without having to mess around with that main room too much. That also means, obviously, if you as a developer are going to change something like this, it's remarkably easy, because if you have to make a change to this multiple choice question, you just go to the page that question's on, make the change, the hotspot still works, everything displays exactly the same. We did a real fast version of that just to make sure that it would work, proof of concept. That, Alan, you might have seen it previewed up on the screen there, but we just did a real run through, right? Like basic text, basic idea, does this work? Seemed like it was great, and then we moved straight into this to finish out our build for the process. Once that wireframe that kind of does this work wireframe, the middle stage that I was just talking about, was done, it really became a matter of reskinning, right? And at that point we knew, okay, we've got an idea that will work for a template, because if you can build something in LECTORA that works in a wireframe, you can build it for future use really easily, right? Reskin it, repurpose it. So that's that file that Alan was showing you here, right? That's the middle file. Back to the final version there, Alan. You can kind of see how the structure starts to come together. If you scroll up, if you hit that main room, right? When we've been talking about everything's self-contained on one page, and then we pop out individual test questions from that page, this is what this is talking about, or what we're talking about. This interaction that we've been kind of teasing here, showing a little bit, it's one single page. It has 4 background images and hotspots. Beyond that and some actions, there's not a whole lot going on here. If you select each one of those hotspots that are on screen, you can see that what they do is they either show a quiz question or they show a clue. And that's all they do. That means that you as a user, if you were to customize something like this, you can go move objects around, change where they were, land on the page, remove the background, change the background, do all kinds of things without breaking the actual, function of this course incredibly easily. So this is where we land. Let's maybe go ahead and play through it real fast. Now that we've kind of talked about, hey, we have a game, here's the process we got to go to the game, we teased the game out. Let's maybe just show this again, and maybe click through a couple times, show that light mode side, maybe show some of the additional questions. And we're going to go through and look at some of the features that we used in this, as well as I'm going to show you how the data works on the backside of this after we do that. So would you mind maybe showing that light mode real quick, Alan?
Yeah.
All right, thanks.
So my time is running out. So
no, that's okay. Let's let that timer run out because we didn't preview that for everybody. But
exactly.
So all right, we quick teased this before. We showed you that we got a game. We showed you how we built it. This is the game in depth. Like I showed before, you click on individual objects, you're going to get a clue. Click on a different object, you're going to get a question. When you answer the question, just like we showed at the top of it, you're going to get a piece of your code, just like we showed. When you're done and you know what the code is, you click the door and you press, you enter your code and you press enter to get through. There's also a couple other little hidden things in here. We're going to show you how those work later. There's a couple other little hidden things. If you turn that light off and on. So Alan mentioned we have a light mode and a dark mode. That's what we're referring to in here. It's kind of an added little, fun effect for users if they want to play in the haunted part, they can do that. If they want to play in the not so haunted part, they can easily click that on and off, and all of the functionality works the same. Again, we're popping, some pages and having them show up in a pop-up window, so it really doesn't affect what's going on the base layer. We've also got that moving spider onto the left there. That's just it's just a PNG image that we're moving and rotating with some of LECTORA's built-in move and rotate functions. You can't hear it most likely, but if you hover over the cat and the radio, yeah, you hear a little bit of it. We got some sound effects that play there in addition to, popping a clue or a quiz. There's a bunch of hidden little things. And at the end of this, right, so if you enter your code and you pass, you guys saw that at the very beginning, you go to the pass screen, you can choose to see a scoreboard, or you could close out there if you want. If you don't pass, if you don't discover the code by the end of the 3-minute timer that we have on here, we're going to try to let that run down. It ends up breaking you out into a fail room where you can choose to then restart the game and play through until you've succeeded. Okay, now tricky little bit about that, and I'm gonna explain this now because it's going to segue into what we ended up doing after this. So we've got a custom X API statement on that pass screen. So when you hit view scoreboard, it's going to send a statement that collects all your variables that you've had throughout this game, and it's going to submit them in one single X API statement that we can track and report on. All those variables, everything that we're tracking, everything we're reporting, in fact, everything that we're seeing here that's being done was done using LECTORA built-in stuff, okay? So the timer that's displaying on the top is a built-in timer object from LECTORA. The way that we've set up and split our code, which up at the top you can clearly see that's which in all caps, that's all customizable and set up with an off-screen text entry field built in through LECTORA. Again, these are all built-in hotspots. Every action that we've taken, there's nothing, no crazy JavaScript or custom CSS or anything like that. This is what it looks like when you get trapped. And if you press retry, you'll see it'll take you back to the beginning of the game. Now, what happens when you do that, okay, is that all of those built-in variables that I said that we were tracking, those follow you through in each loop that you go through the game. So if you go through the game 9 times, you fail 8 times, you pass on the 9th. We're tracking your overall score, which will go into the negatives. We're tracking a cumulative time throughout the game using LECTORA as a elapsed time variable. And we're also tracking how many times you clicked individual questions, how many times you clicked individual clues, how many times you got them wrong. okay? But again, all done using the variables that are either, well, custom variables, but built-in tracking through LECTORA. So maybe let's pick the file apart here real quick, unless there's any questions at this point. And we can kind of go through some of the little doodads that we used as we were building this out.
No questions right now, Bill, so let's take a look at the file.
Sounds great. All right, so if you're looking at the Project Explorer there, you can obviously see, right, at the top of it, we've got this global action that is update elapsed time variable. What we're doing there is we're just using that to kind of keep track of that timer that we have down on the page and make sure that it's forcibly updating. After that, you'll notice it's just additional fonts and some CSS that's in there. We're using that CSS to actually style the pop-up windows that show up. This is something that people have questions about in LECTORA from time to time. So if you end up downloading the file, you can pick that apart and see how we did it. Other than that, it's a standard looking LECTORA file beneath it, right? We've got this welcome page, which is really just, it's an image and a place to enter your name. We've got a pregame room after that, which is the first thing that you guys saw when I was previewing it, just this kind of, set up the gameplay. And then we move into this big test thing that we're talking about. Like we've said a couple times, everything's driven on one single page other than the questions and clues. Those come as pop-ups from external, and there's nothing on those that we should even worry about looking at, because they're just test questions, quiz questions, and that's it. There are a couple actions on here that are interesting up at the very top that you might want to look at. So one of the things that's kind of fun, right? We've got this on-show display spider action up at the top, and what that's doing is it's having an action group run, and that action group right there is the way that we've, using just LECTORA built-in features, made that spider that I mentioned that moves up and down on the screen. We made him move that way, right? And so all that is saying at a certain point, go here, set the state to this, go here, set the state to that, right? But then, because that's a one movement action, we have another action up at the very top to loop that spider thing. So if you see on timed loop spider up at the very top of the main page there, you'll see that really we wait 18 seconds and then we rerun that spider actions group, and that just happens indefinitely. So mention that because in the past we've had questions about how to create looping animations, things like that in LECTORA. This is a really good way to accomplish that easily, right? Move something across the screen, change state, spin it, move it back.
Even we have now a custom states, which creates the illusion of the,
That's a good point.
Of this.
Very good point. Yeah.
And this is all time in here, in spider actions and on time loop spider.
All right, so one other thing to show, right? So one of the things that we had mentioned was that this entire deal is super editable, right? And we had mentioned, well, the test questions are easy editable, the pop-up clues are easily editable, you can move hotspots around wherever you want, but what do you do if you want to change this thing from being, a haunted office environment to being a haunted warehouse, or to being a not haunted warehouse, or being a doctor's office, or whatever it is that you want? How do you do that? Well, the way that we built that out is that we just have single flat background images, right? That's all we have, built to a certain size. If you can make a composite image of any kind, even if you could just bring in an image from real life that you take with your phone and put in this background, this kind of thing will work for you. And I think Alan maybe even made some alternate images to show you how easy that is to change out.
Yeah, and it's worth mentioning, Bill, that all of these assets and all of the backgrounds, we got it from the E-Learning Brothers library. So we have plenty of options to create either these customized backgrounds or just download an image of an image or different environment.
That's true.
From our library.
So, you used everything that was in here. You pulled all that from the library, the ELB library, including the audio files, right?
Exactly. Yeah, including the audio files. Okay, just let me see what I'm going to replace here or switch. This is background light.
Okay.
Cool.
There you go. Yeah. So just real quick, kind of a change of a single image, and you can get a completely different feel here. Hey, you mind changing both those? We'll just preview it real quick too, just to show how easy that is. Yeah, look at that. And then if you click the door and press which, I guess it all functions, right?
Yeah.
All right. That's wonderful. Okay, so what else did we do in here that might be worth looking at? Let's see, we've got some pop-ups in there. We talked about the timer, talked about some global inherited actions. Oh, actually one of the reasons why we went to a test here, right, is we have to have after screens, right? We've got to have a way to push the user out after a certain period of time or after completion to another location. LECTORA has built-in test behavior options that work really well for this. So it kind of was a no-brainer to tie this thing to a test. So that's what we're doing here. If you select the test object and then look at the behavior, not the timer, but the test1 object above it. Yeah, and if you go over to behavior there, you can see, right? So we're pushing to the next page when they pass, and we changed this here recently. We're also pushing to the fail page if they fail. We've also got, if you click on properties there, I'm sorry, results, that's my bad. We've got a grade on there, but technically you don't need one. You can get this thing to actually function in either way. Point is, we're using those kind of built-in test properties to drive what happens after the assessment to avoid having to go in and manually program a ton of that. Now there is a little bit of that tied to the action, the timer action, but you can see that on screen. I think it's 1 or 2 actions to process the assessment and then drive to a page. What else, Alan? I guess it's really just the data after this. Is that right? Yeah. So you'll notice that the file that Alan has up here, it does not have the leaderboard thing that I was showing you when I did the quick preview. That's version we have up on the with the leaderboard data is specifically for DevLearn. Like I was saying, this is going to be there. And if you happen to be there, go play the game. As far as I'm aware, whoever gets the fastest score may be entitled to, I don't know, there's an orange armband in it. There's definitely some goodies to go be found. But I'm going to show you that. I'm going to show you how we did that data exactly. Again, it's very, very simple. So it's worth kind of taking a look at. I'm going to steal the screen from Alan real fast.
Yeah.
And I'm going to show my screen here. So I'm on a different machine. Apologies for the side of the head here. But so the data in this one is actually really, really simple, right? So like I mentioned, it's all done through one XAPI statement. It's a custom XAPI statement. But again, it's tracking built-in LECTORA variables and some custom LECTORA variables, but LECTORA variables nonetheless. So if you know how to access LECTORA variables, you can, with JavaScript, you can create something like this very easily. If the user passes the test, right, on the data version, and they hit this view scoreboard button that I've got down in the left or right-hand corner, what you'll notice is we have this single run JavaScript statement that's going on. What that does, okay, is it's doing a couple things up top, but basically it's sending a statement out to our LRS, whatever LRS this is tied to, right, that says, hey, this user escaped the overall game, right? So whatever the main activity ID of this entire project is, we escaped it. And we did so with these kind of custom values. One, we're putting in a completion time and the duration here so we can map on that a couple ways. But 2, we've got these custom extensions in here. And if you know anything about XAPI, extensions are a really nice little bucket that you can basically include anything you want to in there. Okay, so in our case, we needed a spot to put some of these results that weren't explicitly results values for an XAPI statement. So we put them in extensions and really final time, whatever the custom score was, right, which we kept track of by removing points from a question as you answered the question incorrectly, or removing points from your score if you went over on time. We've got clue clicks, question count, and question incorrect. Really, every time a user clicks a button, we're incrementing a count. If it was a clue, we're saying, hey, clue count goes up 1. If it was a question, hey, question count goes up 1. Question incorrect, we track that kind of thing in standard e-learning courses all the time. There's a bunch of ways to do it. We tracked it, put it to this particular variable. Now, when you do that, when you submit, all those variables to a single statement, and that is all that drives it, you end up with some pretty nice statements that come through to your LRS. I'll show those to you in a second, and you can map on them. I'm going to show you what the statements look like on this machine in just 1 second. But then what do you do with them, right? Well, we created a big composite analytics dashboard to show a leaderboard, right? To show you what we had at the beginning, and in order to try to enhance some of the sticky factor of the game. Getting that back into Lectora, though, is actually remarkably simple. All it is a web object, right? So another built-in tool from Lectora that you kind of don't need to do a lot with. Put the course out there, allow the course to track, go into your LRS and build something there, and then iframe it into Lectora with a web object. So in order to get this kind of level of detailed tracking that we have, all we actually had to do was one statement and one web object to get it to work. So I'm going to show very briefly the dashboard, if I can get my mouse to show up on screen. This is the dashboard that I had kind of showed at the back end of that, right? That was embedded in that wire. It's a very, very, very simple dashboard. All we're doing is going into that data from the statements that we have, and basically saying, hey, wherever the learner is, or wherever the object ID matches the object ID of the game, go find out who had the shortest time in that custom extensions section for, final time, right? Same thing, average time, we're just averaging it all together. Average score, averaging that extension together. Fastest time, we're just pulling the lowest value. Slowest time, we're pulling the highest value. And in this case, we've only got one value to show, so we're not seeing a lot of variety, but it's in there. The actual statements, if you want to see those, look like this. And here's the escaped statement for you to see. Quite simple. All of this is really taken, because in the statement that we crafted, we're actually using Lectora variables to pull in your object ID, so that never has to be updated. So all of the stuff that we showed on the leaderboard there was driven from just these 5 values taken from those Lectora values, right? So that's how the XAPI bit works. Now, before we go on to the next section, I'll just take a minute and see if anybody has any questions about what we're showing so far, or if anybody has any thoughts about it. And if not, we'll move along, and we're going to look at what's new coming out in Lectora and what has come out recently.
I think everybody is so excited and can't wait to try out the template themselves that they don't have any questions. We're getting a lot of feedback that the leaderboard is really cool and they're excited to try this out themselves.
All right. Okay. Well, then I'm going to move on. Okay. So what's new in Lectora? Right, we got what's new in Lectora ELB land? We've got a bunch of stuff. First and foremost, we've got some new characters, right? So one of the things that we've been pushing toward in the Cutout People library is some more inclusive characters. Last Lectora Live, we highlighted some more diverse characters that we had put on. In this particular case, we've got some disabilities highlighted, or some more inclusive features highlighted, and that will continue as we go. So check those out on the asset library. If you're an eLearning Brothers subscriber, those are out there and available for you, and directly integrated into Lectora desktop and online, so you can plop those right into the tool. The characters, incidentally, that we had in the Haunted game, same thing. That character was from our last set. Navigate over to tools, library, dump it right in there, never have to touch an external tool. It's fantastic for that stuff. Okay, what else do we have that is either coming up or just come up? Well, we've got a whole bunch of template changes. In the last month, since the last Lectora Live, we've done about 60 Lectora desktop files that we audited and fixed them for better custom font performance. So if you're using one of those custom Google fonts, it's working a little better. We also included 4 brand new standalone learning and development, Lectora desktop interactions, including a vertical scrolling showcase course, which we've teased out a couple times, but that's now officially out there. And this game that we've been going through today is now available on the eLearning Brothers library as well. There's some more doodads in there, but these are kind of the main ones that we wanted to call out. Those 4 new standalone Lectora desktop interactions are actually quite fun, so maybe go check those out. And next week, I believe we'll have some UI kits coming for Lectora desktop. Alan's been working those. They're really fun, and it's something completely new for Lectora that we haven't done. And I don't know if we've ever done that for Lectora. So look forward to that. And there are Lectora updates for the software to go through. I'm not going to run through these, but we did just have desktop 21.03 come out. There's a lot of fixes that are really good, very useful fixes in there. A couple of note, we had some button state improvements, which allows us to do things like these UI kits that we're going to put out there next week, and allows us to do things like Alan showed with the changing states on the spider. There's also some text wrapping and line wrapping stuff that's going on in there with buttons that's pretty great. And then, we've got some autoplay improvements that people have been asking for. So that's all pretty key. If you'd like to see the full list, you can go to the release notes on Help Guide, and you'll find all those there. And tomorrow, look for an announcement. We've got an update coming to Lectora Online with a pretty neat new feature there. So if you're a DevLearn, you can check us out and come see. And if you're not, I believe we will have an announcement about it coming up. So I'm not going to spoil that one for whoever gets to announce. And that's it for us today, I think. I'm just happy to have shown you this game that we're working on. Hopefully it can give you some ideas of different ways to build content in Lectora, or more specifically, different ways to look at the power of testing in Lectora. And if so, and if you don't have Lectora, give us a call and set up a trial, I guess, right? We've got the screen up here for a reason. So thank you. That's it for me. I'll sign off to you there, Stephanie.
Bill, I love it when you do my closing for me. If you don't have Lectora yet and you want to try out this Haunted Office template, you can sign up for a free trial. I posted the link in the chat as well. And the files for this template that Bill and Alan showed, you will be receiving those in your webinar recording email. They'll come out, you'll get that tomorrow, so you can keep an eye on it. And they are in the library if you can't wait until tomorrow, if you want to just go get started on this right after. All right, well, thank you everyone for joining us. I hope that this interaction got you in the mood for the holiday, the spooky season coming up, and we will all see you at the next webinar. Thank you for joining us.